good, YouTube? We're back again. We are reacting to Britain's most hated subculture. I'm on the road of, reacting to fan culture, subculture in soccer, football, for the people that get mad at me. So yeah, I was requested this video in one of my other videos that I reacted to that are relating to the culture of European soccer, European football. I apologize again, but yeah, so this video is requested. We're gonna react to it. Hopefully it opens my eyes more, because I still don't get why they're so passionate. Like, there's not a sport in America that has the amount of passion that any other country, I feel like, outside of America has for their team playing the sport of football. Like, I think there's none American sport other than like college football for America. There's not really that much diehard passion. Like, I like LeBron, I like basketball, but I'm not gonna go in the streets with flares talking about some, hey, we hate Curry, we hate the what. Like, nah, I'm good, bro. But it's good to open my eyes and see what other people think and how they take it. So that's what we're gonna do here. I'm done yapping. Let's like, comment, subscribe on the video before y'all watch it, and let's get into it.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace.
A senior officer said the video showed the awful callousness of the hooligans.
Police had to intervene to control the fans.
Disorders on the rise.
History of bitter rivalry between their supporters, the West
makes it one of the world's most deadly football tragedies.
This small faction of society has been seen as one of the most controversial subcultures in all of Europe, the football hooligan.
It's not just the football, it's a whole subculture, a scene. And for the first time ever, I was accepted.
Exactly the same as us to go to the match with our boys, meet us and have a good scrap, you know what I mean?
You don't hurt at the time because the adrenaline keeps you going.
Well, before the football hooligan became its own subculture with its own fashion and attitude, violence in football has been there ever since the beginning. Around the 13th century, football started to become a sport. Two neighbouring rival towns would assemble what was pretty much an army of men in what was referred to as mob football. Between the years 1314 and 1666, 30 football bans were put in place.
1314.
With the main issue being the violence and the rioting that would come with it. But you see, gradually football would begin to change. Around the late 1800s, football had kind of slipped into the hands of the gentlemen. And with that was the introduction of modern football, with a rule set called the Cambridge Rules. It was now no longer a sport of the rioting common folk, and instead the sport of the ruling elite. But yet that didn't stop the violence. The first recorded instance of football hooliganism was in 1885, where Preston North End faced Aston Villa. The teams got upset and just started whacking each other with sticks and having a fight. A handful of instances like this would happen, but then England would go to war twice.
Hostilities will end officially at 1 minute after midnight tonight.
Post-war Britain was a very different place than before. In the 50s, we would start to see a rise in these young youth subcultures, such as the Teddy Boys. By the 60s, you had the mods and rockers, as well as skinheads and hippies. Some of these different subcultures would be violent towards each other. They broke away from traditional British values and rebelled against British cultural norms.
Well, I suppose I've been married. I don't want to get married, but I suppose I will.
At the same time, the UK was experiencing a massive wave of immigration post-World War II, with the change in demographics brought with it racial tension and violence. And so, in this time, the English identity was in flux. And as well, in the 60s, mandatory military service for young men came to an end. And so, young working class men had very few places to let out their aggression. But then there was football.
Good luck.
Every single week, you and the boys could get together and go and watch your team play. This was an opportunity to get together with the boys and drink, and occasionally get into a scrap with the opposing fans. And what
occasionally, just as you know,
late 60s
look at the meme.
70s,
oh my,
really
they jumping that
into
boy.
A class of people who were typically white working class men who would assemble these gangs associated with a football team. These gangs would become very organised and referred to themselves as firms. Arsenal had the Herd, Millwall had the Millwall Bushwhackers, West Ham had the Intercity Firm. Each team would start to develop
organized
their own firm,
gangs.
and they would become feared.
Me Bombasi. What?
How this...
Quick question. If you're an opposing fan, why would you go to the home of your team that you're going against if things like this are happening? Like, isn't that like guaranteed you're gonna get jumped? Like, just go to your home games, right? Right? That would make sense, right? Or does this also happen at home games?
Started. Some people believe it's in part due to the fact that the elder generation stopped going to football games. As they were becoming wealthier, there were other things for them to do, and football stopped being this family affair that everyone would go and watch, and really became a young man's pastime. And so with no elders to keep the young fans in check, they became more aggressive and more violent. Hooligans developed this deep pride in where they came from. A lot of it came down to respect. If they didn't feel respected, they would prove themselves by fighting the opponents.
You know what I mean? If you ain't doing it on the terraces, you're going to be doing it somewhere else. It's just that violent streak.
No, it's not a violent streak. It's being proud.
Being proud.
Being proud of you, man. I've been fucking don't let people take the piss out of you.
The attitude of most of these hooligans weren't really to go out and seriously hurt the opposition, but rather to just have some drinks, go watch football, and have a good scrap.
All we're going
a good scrap.
Right, a good game of football, a good punch up and a good piss up. That's all about Millwall.
It was a break from their monotonous lives. Now, when they would come back to work on Monday, they'd all have stories to tell. Like how Barry took on 5 geezers with a pint in his hand without ever spilling a drop. Every week, they would go out fighting for their city, their town, their club. It gave them a purpose and an identity.
When are you going to settle down and get married?
Settle down and get married? Well, getting married, you're restricted, and you can't travel away with a team you love and love, like, you know? And I was going to get married, but I knocked it on the head, all over Millwall.
But very...
So he loves his team so much, he said he's not going to get married. You can still love your team and be married, brother.
Things started to get out of hand. Before we go further with this video, I want to give a shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring.
Shout out Squarespace, but Squarespace, sponsor me. I'm taking Chunks' whole flow. Yes, thank you.
150 were arrested well away from Stamford Bridge when they ran riot on the London Underground.
Into the 70s,
Stamford Bridge.
1974,
Chelsea,
Manchester United were relegated into the second
Chelsea.
division.
Fans on the field again, spilling over from the corner on my right.
Oh.
And I suspect that
the first
we shall see
field floods
calling the players off. Yes, he's taking them off.
The red firm caused carnage around loads of stadiums all up and down the
country.
Look
at Man U.
Same year,
Lenny, you support this.
Wanderers fan stabbed a young Blackpool fan. Football hooliganism was getting out of control. Public sentiment was turning against football.
I'm saying that like I'm saying stabbed like it's shock. I'm sorry for pausing this so much. I'm saying stabbed like that's what they do out there. I'm sorry.
See it as a massive problem. So football organisers had to try and do something. They took measures to try and limit the crowd size. They segregated the home and the away fans with fences, but nothing was really changing. Up until then, football hooliganism was mainly just a problem in England. However, in the mid-50s, the European Cup was introduced, and for the first time, English football supporters had a chance to get the boys together, pat their lagers, and head to war overseas.
Oh no, that must be even worse. So that's pretty much every team. Look at them running.
Mobs brought violence and destruction.
You're there like, oh yeah, I'm gonna beat him.
These are the most exciting times of their lives.
Like, for no reason. And then look at the camera. Oh yeah, let's run up and take a picture of the scrap.
Get into a country and just
what?
Absolutely berserk.
And with this,
unheard of in America. We shoot people, but not over sports. Not over sports. I just said that's a joke.
Become known as the English disease.
Disease. I wouldn't say it's a disease. I just said
1975,
they're
Leeds
passionate.
United were banned from playing football in Europe after their fans had an all-out riot after a game against Bayern Munich. Manchester United were banned after 1977 after fans were rioting before, during, and after their cup-winning game against Saint Etienne. But you see, football hooliganism wasn't just being contained to the football grounds, but the hooligans would start.
That is a WWE move. He took his head and smashed it on the back. Yeah, nah, I've seen John Cena do that before.
To develop more organized criminal behaviors, such as looting high-end fashion brands. This, in and of itself, would develop a unique fashion for football hooligans, as Gary and the boys would come back to England dressed in the finest after the football games. This fashion would be dubbed football casuals.
You used to see a lot of the majority of the fans wearing
shirts. That got that Stone Island.
Small group of look like, you know, big, strong-looking men. They used to be the ones that sung the most as well. And used to start the songs off. And back in the day, the only time you saw Stone Island was at a football match, pretty much, I'd say. To the point where if you saw a group of lads wearing Stone Island and CP Company or something along them lines, they were fair game.
Whilst every other football fan would just wear the team's uniform, the football casuals become very distinct and able to detect, wearing brands like Sergio Tacchini, Fila, Lacoste, Pringles, Stone Island, and many others. They'd often have a skinhead buzz cut. These lads would be dressed to the absolute nines every single football game and then get into massive fights.
Was nearly not to spark out. Who's you playing football with? They're casuals. Casuals?
It would be in
Is there a movie about this? Because I'm seeing like something that says movie clips. I would be down to watch that. This is interesting.
70s and the 80s, it would be considered the golden era of football hooliganism. The media coverage was in full swing. The UK was in a massive moral panic over football hooliganism. Things were starting to get more and more out of hand, and they started to turn political. It was around the same time where large parts of the skinhead movement had been overtaken by far-right nationalist groups. Things like the National Front and the British movement. These groups would latch onto their more tribalist mentality and patriotic nature, and a subsection of hooliganism become linked to far-right extremism.
Where organisations like the National Front,
so they started linking with political parties.
New members from football terraces.
I do want to point out that Vice made a whole video on this, and there's a lot of criticisms of that, saying that football firms tend to just represent the attitudes of the town they're from. So if a town is very right-wing or very left-wing, the hooligans will tend to represent that. And so football hooligans weren't inherently far-right.
That went through your window?
Oh, that went upstairs.
That one. As I got to the gate, I got hit over the head with an iron bar.
Either way, the British public was in full
just a casual Sunday.
The middle classes of Britain have developed a very deep hatred for this subculture. There were often working class people who were seen as out wreaking havoc on towns on a weekly basis. It was a massive moral panic, and due to the sharp rise in unemployment in the 80s, there was a deep resentment in the working class. And you can see that in things like the miners' strike and the Tottenham riots. There were deep tensions in Britain, and football became the main vessel to channel that anger. Things were getting pretty bad. Someone would need to come in and put an end to it.
Bearing now Mrs. Thatcher as Prime Minister.
1985 was considered the worst year ever for football hooliganism. There were a few key instances that would really push the Thatcher government to act. On the 13th of March, Millwall and Luton would face each other.
31 people were injured when Millwall fans went on the rampage before, during and after the match.
Described as one of the worst nights of violence in British football, the Prime Minister is demanding action.
And it turned into a riot that destroyed Luton. 81 people were injured, 60 of those being police officers. 31 arrests were made. Fans tore up the stadium. They destroyed the town. They were smashing people's windows. One police officer suffered a heart attack. They had to receive mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, all whilst being kicked in the head by football fans. But it would be on the 29th of May where disaster would strike.
The Heysel Stadium,
mouth to mouth.
Brussels, the capital of Belgium, has been a sickening and bewildering sight. As a result, there is for certain serious injury when a wall collapsed, and maybe worse.
Liverpool played Juventus in the European Cup final at the Heysel Stadium, where 39 people would be crushed to death by a wall that collapsed as a result.
39 people died because of a match? And I'd never heard of this before? Wow.
Of fighting.
Italian. I would like to say to all the English people that they are very famous in the world for their education and self-control and so on. We have now the proof that all over in continent, everybody say, don't be like English people.
What I see. After Brussels, the world shuts the door
Don't be like
English
people.
Today, the governing body, FIFA, registered their disgust over the events at Brussels
by
banning English clubs from all internationals.
This ban lasted until 1990, and a year later for Liverpool to be unbanned. The UK had had enough.
I wish we could get those responsible, get them before a court, and stiff sentences so that they stop anyone else.
Soccer violence has now reached the top of the political agenda.
And so the Thatcher-led
That's 39 people.
Government set up a war cabinet to tackle football hooliganism. Along with the Popplewell Committee, many ideas were put forward and laws passed to try and tackle it. You had the Public Order Act in 1986, which permitted courts to ban fans from stadiums. The Football Spectators Act in 1989 banned convicted hooligans from attending matches internationally. Stadiums were forced to make changes. They were no longer allowed standing sections. They had to have seats, along with much tighter security, better quality turnstiles, and tickets were made much more expensive.
Heysel and Hillsborough changed everything. Hillsborough more so than Heysel, because
It changed the design of stadiums. It's a kind of social cleansing of football, a deliberate pricing policy that has pushed hooliganism, they thought, to the back burner.
But you see, the violence didn't stop immediately. The firms just got more organised and smarter and moved the violence out into the streets, where firms would become like militia groups, knowing how to ambush people with the locations they were in.
These back streets right there, it were good for us because we knew every back street where they were going. Away things didn't know where they were going, but we could.
However, into the 90s...
Hey, move tack, bro. I don't even blame them at this point. If you know your city and you know the spots where people be at, bro, just...
English disease slowly started to cure. After the European ban was lifted, families actually started to attend football games again. Police presence had massively grown and they'd become much more equipped to deal with the problem. Hooligans were getting tougher and tougher sentences and violence did start to drop.
Apart from the people dying, going to you gotta prepare your. I couldn't imagine going to a basketball game and saying, okay, I gotta get my knife in his pocket, I gotta get my fist ready, I gotta get a beer. Or do you go thinking like that, or you just go, I'm gonna have a good time and whatever happens happens, and then that happens and you're like, a good scrap, I had a good beer, I had our team won. And I went home with a couple of scratches and scars, but I'm good. Like, was that like your every Saturday, every Sunday type thing?
There's over 4,000 Germans booked in for Europe this summer. You come and take us out with your top firm, then you can take us on tour.
Sorry for pausing it again. Somebody comment the name of that movie. Just comment it so I can watch it.
Really quiet down by the late 90s. By the early 2000s, nostalgia grew for football hooliganism.
There's nothing different about me. I'm just another bored Mal approaching 30 in a dead-end job who lives for the weekend.
With films like The Football Factory, Green Street, The Firm, as well as very scared Danny Dyer did this show called The Real Football Factories.
Mate, are you sure we're going to walk in this booze? We're going to end up getting ironed out by this little firm, you know what I mean? Yeah. But you seem sweet as, but it's early days yet, you know what I mean? I'm sure someone's going to glass me anyway. Only joking.
Bless him. Books were being written and ex-football hooligans became famous. A romanticization of this era really grew in the mid-2000s. The football casual aesthetic had become a staple in fashion and can still be seen today. But football hooliganism never went away entirely.
But in Russia, they're trained, organized, and brutally violent.
England arguably exported hooliganism abroad, where instead of having firms, they call them ultras, and it appears that they are far more violent and intense than most British firms.
We all went there to show that the English are not hooligans. They're just posers. They're little girls.
Russia seems to have this hatred against England, and they want to prove that they're better than us, which led to the UEFA riots in 2016 between Russia and England. And football firms still exist, and there has been a bit of an effort to organise these fights and make them a bit more legitimate, which personally I think is a pretty good idea. All of this has led many psychologists and sociologists to study and pin down what causes football hooliganism.
And hooliganism emerged when there were lots of uncertainties about identity, uncertainties about place, you know, even uncertainty about gender identities, you know, with the emergence of hippie cultures and new ways of doing masculinity.
Not really knowing where you belong and what have you, so I was attracted to the togetherness as well of all the lads, you know.
It felt normal, plus you felt as if you had a family.
For the first time, probably felt like I belonged somewhere.
At the core of what drives these men are the same exact things that drive men to protect their countries in war. It's a powerful energy that comes with it a lot of responsibility. When carefully nurtured and directed into something positive, it can be amazing.
So we're trying
but when it's not, it can be terrible.
The violence of English football fans brought about the death of 38 people and injuries to 454.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel and watch this video right here.
I'm pretty sure everyone that went to this, went to that game got injured. So I was gonna say 450 is crazy, but I'm pretty sure everyone that went to that game probably got somewhat a bottle through at them. That's probably not even the specific number. But yeah, wow, okay, I'm gonna look at those. I'm gonna try and look at those movies. What was it called? The football fan or something like that. Yeah, well, I'm gonna try and look at The Firm. Yeah, so I'm gonna probably look into those. Maybe watch on my own time, get more of a knowledge of this football, because I still don't even get it. But they said the psychologist says the same passion that they had, they just put it into the wrong thing. So it's the same passion you have to protect your family, the same passion you have to be a firefighter, the same passion you have to work and get money to provide for yourself. I guess they just put it towards protecting and providing for their football/soccer team. Did the soccer teams promote it? Like, were the teams soccer? Did the football teams promote it? Did the football teams, or were the football teams like, oh yeah, we, like the players are like, yeah, we want you guys to come out this weekend and we want you to throw a good scrap and come and support us and scream as long as you can and help us as we play for your team and try our best to win. And then like, were they promoting that, or were they just like playing the game and going home, and then these people were just doing whatever they wanted to do just because? Like, it would be weird for me, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna throw a punch just because I like this guy on this team and he doesn't even know who I am. Like, he doesn't even promote it type thing. Now I'd be like, But yeah, I respect it. I definitely still want to watch more videos on it to fully gain better knowledge about it. But yeah, it's the end of the video. This guy, what's his name? I gotta support it. This was a great video. Jimmy the Giant. Great video. I'm not gonna lie, great video. Bro went to 13 something 13 something to get stats. So yeah, congrats to him. This was a great video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.